Once upon a time, beyond the edge of waking thought and nestled softly between the folds of dreams, there was a quiet valley untouched by time. It was not found on any map, nor spoken of in books, for it was a place only the moon knew by name. The creatures of the day had never wandered far enough to find it, and those who might have stumbled near in slumber had long forgotten what they saw. They called it, though only in whispers, the Whispering Valley. By day, it was peaceful and still, wrapped in soft blankets of mist and framed by gentle hills that rolled like sleeping giants. Wildflowers swayed in the breeze, and the trees, old and wise, stood watch like silent sentinels. But by night, when the moon cast her silver gaze across the land, the valley stirred with secrets. Not loud ones, oh no, only the softest of rustlings, the faintest clicks, the lightest of taps, as if the earth itself were stretching after a long dream. It was on such a night, under a pale and shimmering moon, that something curious happened. Beneath the largest willow tree, whose branches drooped like tired arms cradling the ground, a single finger bone twitched. Soft sound. A faint clicking, like bone on stone. At first, it was barely a movement, more a suggestion than a gesture. But then, like a leaf remembering the wind, the rest followed. A hand curled slowly from the soil, then an arm. A ribcage, dusty and moss-touched, rose like a tide from the earth. And so came Sir Rattlewick. He emerged not with fear or fury, but with the slow curiosity of someone waking from a long nap, unsure if it was still night or if morning had come. His bones, though bare, shimmered faintly under the moonlight, clean as pearl and covered in flecks of old earth. A tiny beetle, undisturbed by the rising skeleton, crawled across his clavicle and down his spine. Sir Rattlewick sat up and looked around, though he had no eyes, only two hollow sockets that somehow seemed to blink with wonder. He said aloud to no one in particular, for he had discovered he could speak. What a peculiar nap that was. He touched his skull with bony fingers, feeling the round dome thoughtfully. I dare say I've lost my hat, he said again, dusting himself off. He stood, slow but sure, and stretched his limbs one by one, each movement accompanied by a soft clack or pop. His joints whispered secrets long buried beneath soil and slumber. He wore no clothes, only the fine artistry of bones polished by time. But atop his femur there hung a single faded ribbon, perhaps once tied to a gift, or maybe left behind by a bird with a sense of style. He adjusted it with great dignity. Thus Sir Rattlewick took his first steps. The valley welcomed him like an old friend. The grass parted gently beneath his feet, and the trees swayed a little, as if nodding in recognition. He wandered in slow, thoughtful spirals, marveling at the world around him. He found a brook that chuckled softly over stones, and when he leaned down to look, his reflection looked back with hollow grace. Charming fellow, he said to himself, but as he wandered, a gentle unease curled at the edge of his thoughts. For though he did not know who he had been, he sensed that something had changed, that the world was not as he remembered, or perhaps he was not who he once had been. Hours passed, or perhaps moments. In the Whispering Valley, time had no interest in keeping track. And then, quite suddenly, he heard it. Sir Rattlewick turned. Ah, he said with delight, I'm not the only one. From beneath a cluster of moon-kissed mushrooms, another skeleton stirred. This one was slender, graceful, and wore a string of ivy like a necklace. Her fingers were long and nimble, and her eye sockets sparkled with moonlight. Good evening, she said, sitting up with elegance. Or is it morning? Sir Rattlewick bowed, his bones creaking politely. Sir Rattlewick at your service. And you, my dear. Lady Tibia, she replied with a curtsy. I seem to have misplaced my memories. Ah, said Rattlewick, nodding. A common occurrence this evening. They sat together beneath the willow, watching the stars trace quiet paths across the heavens. Then a third clatter joined them, a flourish this time, as though someone had taken a bow. Maestro Clackens, announced the newcomer. He was a ribcage with rhythm, a metatarsal with melody. As he stood, he tapped his own ribs with two femurs, producing a cheery percussion. Delighted to make your acquaintance. And so the gathering began. One by one, bones stirred. Some shyly, some with great flair. They rose with yawns and stretches, laughter and stumbles. They named themselves by instinct. Skippy Shinbone, Dame Mandibella, Sir Hinge of Elbows Higher. They formed a circle around the willow tree, bones clicking in harmony, voices soft as lullabies. No one knew where they had come from or why they had awoken, but no one seemed afraid. "I believe," said Lady Tibia softly, "that the moon has called us." They all turned to look up at the sky. The moon, full and round, beamed down like an old friend with a secret. Sir Rattlewick stood, raising one arm toward it. "Then let us answer, not with noise or trouble, but with grace, with laughter, with—" He paused, searching for the word. "Shenanigans," offered Maestro Clackens helpfully. A murmur of agreement followed. Yes, shenanigans. Not the kind that frighten or fool, but the kind that warm hearts and lift spirits. The kind that make you wake from sleep with a smile you can't quite explain. As the night deepened, the skeletons began to dance. No music was needed. Maestro Clackens provided the beat, and the rustling trees hummed along. The stars blinked slowly, like drowsy eyes, and the brook giggled as it always had. In the heart of the Whispering Valley, a new kind of life had begun. A life not bound by breath or memory, but by joy. A quiet joy, full of wonder, play, and the promise of gentle mischief. Sir Rattlewick spun slowly in the moonlight, his bones gleaming like opals. Around him, his new companions laughed, twirled, and shared stories they hadn't lived but somehow still remembered. "I think," he said softly to Lady Tibia, "this is only the beginning." She smiled, her jaw clicking with affection. "Yes," she replied, "the beginning of something beautifully strange." And so, under the gaze of the watchful moon, the skeletons of the Whispering Valley danced into the night, their shenanigans only just beginning. In the nights that followed the first stirring, the Whispering Valley became more alive than it had ever been. Not with bustle or clamor, but with a quiet joy that twinkled like dew under starlight. The moon returned, night after night, casting her silver veil over the land as if coaxing forgotten dreams back into the world. The skeletons had found each other, and in each other, a sense of belonging, though none could quite say why. They had no memories of who they once were, but they were not sad. In fact, they felt free. Unburdened by names or worries, they created new selves from laughter and instinct. Sir Rattlewick, ever the gentleman, took it upon himself to guide new arrivals gently into wakefulness. Each evening, when the moon rose, he walked the valley paths with a polished lantern that glowed not with flame, but with moonlight itself, an ethereal orb held inside a jar of glass and hummingbirds' wings. He would pause when he heard the telltale sound, the faint shift of earth, the rattling sigh of slumber broken. Then he'd extend a hand and say, "Welcome back to the dance, dear friend." And one by one, more skeletons joined the gathering. There was Lady Carpella, who wore a crown of pine needles and spoke in rhyme. She loved riddles and gently startled birds with her whimsical puns. There was Tibby Tarsal, small and excitable, who bounced rather than walked and left trails of daisy petals wherever she went. And then came Bonaparte the Brave, who, despite having no memory of battles, wore a soup pot as a helmet and swore oaths to protect the valley's moss from encroaching squirrels. They gathered beneath the old willow tree each night, its branches forming a canopy of comfort. Beneath it they built something wondrous, not of stone or wood, but of stories. Each skeleton shared not memories, but dreams. They invented tales of who they might have been. A moonlit night, a librarian of cloud scrolls, a musician in the orchestra of stars. And whether or not the tales were true did not matter, for in the telling they found meaning. One moonlit evening, as fireflies blinked like drifting constellations, something peculiar happened. From the base of the willow, a soft light glowed. The skeletons gathered round, quiet with curiosity. The roots had parted, just slightly, revealing a large, leather-bound book. It was ancient but not dusty. Bound in bark and stitched with silver hair, It pulsed faintly, as if it breathed. Sir Rattlewick approached with reverence and knelt beside it. "The bone book," he whispered, though he did not know how he knew the name. The others leaned in, the hush thick as velvet. Lady Tibia opened the cover with delicate fingers. The first page shimmered into being, not ink, but moonlight caught in the shape of words. "To those who rise in joy, may this guide thee. Live in harmony, play with kindness, and remember. The bones remember only what matters most." A gentle sigh passed through the group. No one spoke for a while. They simply sat, together, letting the words soak in like lullabies. Over the next many nights, the skeletons read the bone book aloud, one page at a time. It did not contain facts or instructions. Rather, it was a collection of riddles, lullabies, and peculiar suggestions. Tiptoe through the dreams of foxes. Replace a stone with a smile. Do not startle the dandelions. They are easily offended. The book did not command, it invited. It inspired. It made them giggle and wonder. And as they read, they began to organize themselves. They formed the Council of Rattles, a delightful circle of decision-making where every voice mattered, even those who preferred to communicate only through interpretive dance or xylophone solos. Meetings were held every third moon, beneath the willow tree, always beginning with tea made from imaginary leaves and cookies crafted from air. They discussed the important matters of the valley. Should owls be considered honorary skeletons? Was it polite to tickle the fog? What to name the puddle near the North Hill that made very satisfying bloop sounds? Each answer was recorded in the Book of Soft Decisions, which changed color depending on the mood of the meeting. Most days it glowed lavender. But the most important task of the council was keeping balance. Shenanigans were encouraged, but only those that brought joy. It became their creed. Mischief, but make it merry. And so, the skeletons practiced. They danced in moonlight circles, twirling with leaves and whispering poems to the stars. They played gentle tricks, like hanging garlands between trees so the morning deer would pass through festive arches. They rearranged pine cones into smiley faces, painted raindrops with dreams, and once convinced a raccoon he was royalty for a full week. There was no rush, no hurry. In the Whispering Valley, time did not tick. It hummed. And in that soft hum, the skeletons built something sacred. A community of forgotten bones who remembered only joy. One night, Tibby Tarsal asked a question. "Do you think we had names before?" Bonaparte scratched his jawbone. "We must have. But they weren't nearly as fun as the ones we've got now." Lady Carpella smiled. "Maybe those names were heavy. These ones float." Sir Rattlewick nodded slowly. "And perhaps," he said, "the moonlight didn't just wake us. It set us free." They all fell quiet again, listening to the wind. For just a moment, it sounded like laughter. Not loud, not mischievous, but soft and full of memory. And far above, the moon smiled. The days in Whispering Valley remained still, suspended like petals caught in honey, while the nights bloomed with life. By now, the skeletons had created something rare. A village of sorts, though it had no walls or roads, only gatherings and glades, quiet fires that didn't burn and music that didn't need instruments. Their hearts didn't beat, yet something within them pulsed with purpose. And it was one moonlit night, clear and silver blue, that Sir Rattlewick awoke to a sound. Not one of clatter or whisper, but a tone long, low, and beckoning. Sound. A soft, resonant hum, like an ancient bell heard from beneath the earth. He sat up in the soft moss that had become his nightly resting place beneath the willow. His ribcage resonated faintly with the tone, like a harp string vibrating to a distant pluck. He turned to Lady Tibia, who was already awake, her skull tilted skyward. "You hear it too?" he asked softly. She nodded. "It's a song, but one that's waiting to be finished." The others gathered soon after, drawn by the same sound. Bonaparte with his soup pot helmet, Carpella in her pine crown, Tibby bouncing in little circles. Together they followed the sound. It wasn't loud. It was something felt more than heard, a pull toward the hills on the valley's far edge. The hills that even the wind rarely disturbed. At the base of the tallest hill they found it. A ring of stones, weathered and sunken, glowing faintly with silver light. In the center, a single spiral etched into the earth. Maestro Clackens stepped forward, placing his phalanges upon the spiral. "It's not just a sound," he whispered. "It's a memory." And with that, the spiral opened. Not with a crack or rumble, but like mist parting in morning light. The ground shimmered, and a gentle stairway revealed itself, descending into darkness. Without hesitation, Sir Rattlewick took the first step. "Let us see where the song begins." They descended slowly, bones lit by the glow of the moonlight lantern, the stairway winding into a cavernous space below. It was not a tomb, though it might have once been. It was warm, with walls of soft stone and threads of light weaving through the rock like veins of starlight. The air was still, but full of presence. And at the center of it all stood an instrument, or something like one, a great circular frame of bone and crystal, strings stretched between its curves. It stood tall as a tree, humming with the sound they had followed. The lunaria, as the bone book would later call it. Lady Carpella stepped forward and ran her phalanges gently across the strings. A warm note bloomed into the air, one that shimmered with a story. Suddenly, the walls of the cavern lit up, showing glimpses, soft images made of light and dust. A skeleton, once a bard, playing in moonlight. A crowd of creatures, not all human, dancing in quiet harmony. A moment of stillness, where the bard lay down his lute and rested forever beneath the willow tree. The lunaria had been built from that bard's dream, to create music so beautiful that it could be heard even after time forgot his name. Lady Tibia stepped forward, plucking a string. More visions flowed, children laughing under starlight. A fox curled beside a fire made of laughter. Bones dancing, not to frighten but to remember. Each note played not a song, but a memory. And in that cavern beneath the hollow hill, the skeletons realized something profound. They had not woken by accident. The valley, the moonlight, the dreams. It was all part of something deeper. The lunaria had called them back not because they were lost, but because they were needed. "Joy," said Sir Rattlewick softly, "has memory, and it seeks a voice." They formed a circle around the instrument and began to play, not with technique, but with intention. Each skeleton plucked, tapped, or whispered to the strings, and the lunaria responded. The cavern filled with melody, not loud, but wide, like a soft sky unfolding. Above, the valley shimmered faintly. Trees paused, stars blinked slower, and all through the hills, those who listened in dreams felt comfort. That night, they did not return to the willow tree. They slept in the hollow hill, curled beneath glowing crystals and notes still echoing. And above them, the bone book flipped its own page, gently glowing. Chapter 3. When Bones Remember the Music. It began with a peculiar breeze. Not a cold one, nor a swift one, but a breeze that giggled. Yes, giggled. It tumbled down the hollow hill like a playful child, ruffling leaves, stirring the moss, and tugging gently at the cloaks of our dear skeleton friends. Tibby Tarsal was the first to notice. She stood beneath a nightflower tree, watching its pale blossoms sway despite the stillness of the air around them. "Something is coming," she said, not with fear, but with a grin. "Something ticklish." Sir Rattlewick tilted his skull, listening. "It feels like mischief." Lady Carpella, who had been composing a haiku out of bird feathers and echo dust, nodded slowly. "The moon's feeling sprightly tonight." And indeed she was. Overhead, the full moon beamed brighter than usual. So bright she cast not one, but 3 shadows behind each skeleton. A shimmering veil of mist began to rise from the valley floor, coiling and curling like it was waking from a nap. This fog was not like ordinary fog. It didn't creep. It danced. Sound. Whimsical, twinkling tones as fog swirls in the background. It swooped between trees, spun into shapes, and whispered in voices that sounded like forgotten laughter. The bone book, resting gently beneath the willow tree, rustled on its own. A page turned with no hand to guide it, revealing a new message. When the fog begins to twirl, prepare thy bones to spin and whirl. The mischief moon is up to play. Let the fog games lead the way. The skeletons looked at one another. Then, in unison, they stood, brushed off their moss and pine needles, and followed the fog. It led them through the whispering valley like a silver ribbon. Everywhere it passed, the air shimmered. Colors turned softer. Sounds turned sweeter. Even the trees leaned in, curious. Soon, they reached the glade known as the Gentle Hollow, a wide open space ringed with moonflowers and dewlight mushrooms. The fog pooled here, and from it rose shapes. Tall, wispy creatures with elongated limbs and no clear faces. The fog folk. These weren't frightening beings. They were spun of dream stuff and night air, soft as sighs and silly as shadows. One of them bowed with exaggerated grace, and from the misty hush, a voice emerged. Would the bone folk care to dance? Lady Tibia clapped her hands. We would. Bonaparte tried to draw a tiny sword made of twig and twine, but it flopped over. Is this a duel? No, whispered a fogling, wrapping around him like a scarf. It's a dance-off. The skeletons spread out across the glade. The fog shimmered in spinning pillars, and the mischief moon above began to pulse with soft flashes, as if blinking with amusement. Each skeleton took a turn. Lady Carpella floated with grace, her joints swaying like willow branches in wind. Tibby bounced and spun, cartwheeling so quickly her bones made a gentle xylophone tune. Bonaparte marched in dramatic circles, saluting mushrooms and bowing to the fog. Sir Rattlewick, always the gentleman, danced a waltz no one else knew the steps to, but the fog learned and followed. Then came the fog folk. They shifted into shapes. Foxes with wings, tea kettles with legs, trees that bowed and curtsied. They mirrored the skeleton's moves, then invented their own, and soon the glade swirled with motion and delight. Sound, soft giggles, rhythmic footsteps, joyful energy rising and falling like a lullaby wave. They danced for what felt like moments yet might have been hours. Time under the mischief moon became stretchy. When the music faded, the fog bowed low. Thank you for the dance, came the collective whisper. Thank you, replied Sir Rattlewick, placing his top hat over his heart. The fog folk began to dissolve, melting into moonlight puddles and morning dreams. But before they disappeared entirely, one of them floated to the bone book and gently nudged it. Another page turned. A new message appeared. Laughter echoes longer than fear, and fog always remembers joy. The skeletons returned to their willow, weary in the most wonderful way. They curled beneath mushrooms and leaves, their bones softly humming from the dance. Tibby yawned, though she had no lungs, and whispered, Best party ever. Lady Carpella nodded. The moon knows how to mischief. Sir Rattlewick chuckled. I dare say we do too. The mischief moon watched from above, her light gentle now, like a kiss on the forehead. The fog faded from the valley, leaving behind the faint scent of lavender and vanilla, and the bone book glowed quietly, resting in the soft cradle of moss, its pages gently settling as dreams drifted in like feathers. As Whispering Valley settled once more beneath a blanket of starlight, the skeletons rested beneath their willow, their bones still faintly humming from the mischief and movement of the fog dance. But as the fog dissolved and the mischief moon retreated behind a veil of soft clouds, something ancient and quiet stirred in the north corner of the valley, a place known only in whispers. The Bone Orchard. It wasn't marked on any map. The Bone Book had never mentioned it, and even Sir Rattlewick, who prided himself on knowing every stone and tree, had only ever heard tales. Lady Tibia dreamed of it that night. In her dream, she wandered through rows of trees that didn't bear leaves, but instead bloomed with tiny skeletal flowers, petals shaped like ribs, stamens like knucklebones. And beneath them, a soft golden glow pulsed from the earth. She awoke with a whisper on her tongue. It's blooming. Sir Rattlewick opened one hollow eye socket. What is? The orchard, she said, already standing. It's calling. Within minutes, the others stirred and gathered. Though the Bone Book remained quiet and still, the air tingled with purpose. Together, They journeyed through the tall grass and old shadows of the valley, walking in a line, their footsteps making music on the dew-soft ground. At the edge of a forgotten copse, they found it, a grove of white trees, not white from snow or bark, but from age. Each tree stood twisted and tall, smooth as polished bone, and their branches wove together like a cathedral roof. The ground was covered in petals, bone-pale and glowing faintly in the dark. Lady Carpella reached down and touched one. It pulsed softly beneath her touch, like a heartbeat. "It's alive," she whispered, "and it remembers." The skeletons stepped carefully through the orchard. Each tree they passed seemed to lean in, not ominous, but curious, watching. At the center of the grove there stood a single flower. Unlike the rest, it bloomed in color, a soft golden hue, with petals of translucent light and a stem that shimmered with memory. It grew from a circle of ancient stones, each carved with tiny bone etchings. Bonaparte kneeled beside it, placing a finger gently against the stem. Instantly, images flowed. A child once burying a bird here, whispering a lullaby. A weaver spinning threads of silver as she laughed beside a fire. A lonely bard, returning to the grove every year to leave a note to the wind. The flower was made of stories. It had bloomed not from soil, but from moments, kindnesses and quiet love, long forgotten by those who made them. Lady Tibia placed her hand on Bonaparte's shoulder. "We're meant to remember." The bone book, back at the willow, flipped a page in the wind. "When the orchard blooms, listen with your marrow. The stories will guide the stillness." They formed a circle around the flower. One by one, each skeleton shared something from before. A memory, a wish, even a joke they once told. As they spoke, the flower glowed brighter, responding not to sound, but to sentiment. Maestro Clackens lifted a hand and began to conduct. Not music, but silence. A moment of reverence. A wind passed through the orchard, lifting petals into the air. The trees rustled gently, as though sighing. And in that quiet moment, a sound emerged. A soft lullaby, sung not in words, but in feeling. It was the sound of belonging. The skeletons sat beneath the trees for hours, unmoving, simply listening. Some of them shed tears, not from sorrow, but from remembering joy. The bloom at the center slowly released a final petal, which drifted down and landed on Sir Rattlewick's lapel. He smiled. "A gift," he said, "for all the stories we still carry." They returned at dawn, walking in silence, the bone book glowing warmly as if it, too, had listened. Beneath the willow the page read, "Even in stillness, the soul blooms." The stars above Whispering Valley had always been generous. They shimmered in clusters, danced in ripples, and sometimes blinked as if winking at the world below. But on this particular evening, there was something different in the air. The sky held its breath. Lady Tibia was the first to notice it. She had wandered to the western ridge with Tibby bouncing at her side, their bones glowing faintly from the light of the fireflies. The wind carried a whisper, not quite a word, but unmistakably familiar. A longing. She knelt in the grass and placed her hand against the earth. Pulsed, once. Back at the willow, the bone book's pages turned. A new entry revealed itself in golden ink. "When stars yearn and ribs remember, the wishing bone awakens. Find it beneath the lone lantern tree, where wishes are heard without being spoken." Sir Rattlewick and the others gathered quickly. They moved like a tide of gentle purpose, led by the pull of the sky. The lone lantern tree stood near the edge of the valley's dreaming cliffs. It bore no fruit, no leaves, only small glowing lanterns that hung like sleeping fireflies. Beneath its roots, half buried in moss, they found it. A single rib bone, longer than any of theirs, smooth and warm to the touch. The wishing rib. Bonaparte touched it and gasped. Not from pain, but from a sensation like starlight rushing through his bones. "It wants to make a pact," he said. Lady Carpella stepped forward, eyes soft with curiosity. "What kind of pact?" "The kind that only falling stars can seal," said a voice behind them. It wasn't one of the skeletons. From the shadows beneath the lantern tree emerged a figure of stardust, tall and cloaked in twilight, its face a swirl of galaxies. "I am Erilyn," it said, bowing deeply, "Star Weaver, Memory Keeper. And you, my skeletal friends, are about to witness the starfall." Sound. A low celestial hum begins to build, like a chord plucked from the sky. The air shimmered. The first star streaked across the sky, then another. Within moments, a river of stardust poured from the heavens. Silent, graceful, radiant. The skeletons stood in awe. Some reached out, and to their surprise, the stars responded, slowing as they passed, trailing light across phalanges and ribcages. "The wishing rib," Erilyn continued, "is an anchor for longing. Long ago, someone wished not to be forgotten. And so the bone remains, holding that wish until someone brave enough agrees to carry it." Lady Tibia stepped forward. "We'll carry it," she said, without hesitation. "All of us." The rib glowed softly. From its surface, threads of starlight rose and drifted toward each skeleton, wrapping them gently like a warm wind. Erilyn lifted a hand. "Then the pact is made. The stars will watch, and when the time comes, they will help you remember even what time itself forgets." Suddenly, the field around them changed. The cliffs became clear pools of light. The grass glowed. The lanterns in the tree swayed though there was no wind. Visions bloomed in the air. A skeleton placing the wishing rib beneath the tree, whispering a name. A child looking at the stars, promising to come back one day. A sky full of wishes, tied together by bones that chose to remember. The starfall continued, now slower, more graceful, as if savoring the moment. Erilyn began to fade. "You have accepted the first of many pacts. Guard the rib well, speak its wish often. And remember, stars answer those who carry joy." The figure dissolved into the sky like a final ember. The wishing rib remained. Sir Rattlewick cradled it carefully. "We'll keep it safe, and we'll keep its promise." That night, the skeletons didn't sleep beneath the willow. They camped beneath the lantern tree, the wishing rib resting in the center of their circle. Tibby curled next to it and whispered a secret wish into the night. One by one, they did the same. Wishes of hope, of memory, of laughter yet to come. The bone book glowed gently back in the valley. A new page appeared. "Those without hearts can still hold hopes, and stars do not forget those who carry them kindly."